I want you to control your anger. There's a way to feel better. That's one thing to remember. No matter where you are, you can be a star. Stop and take a deep breath and relax yourself. Take another deep breath and relax it, and relax it. Eliminate violence.
Let me say a special good morning to our listeners, those of you via Classic Radio 105.5, 105.9. Good morning and welcome to another edition of To The Point. Those of you who are viewing us this morning, whether it's Channel 7, 11 or Channels 20, those of you via social media platforms, whether it's the YouTube channels, also the Facebook page, good morning and welcome. Let me say good morning to my, of course, co-host, guest, all in between.
Yeah.
Let me say good morning to Mr. McIntyre. Good morning and welcome back for another edition of To The Point.
Yes, GT, good morning. It's always good to be here on a Monday. And let me say pleasant morning to the listeners, the followers, and all the contributors to the success of this program on a Monday morning. It's always my pleasure.
All right. How was your weekend, man? Was it a typical one, or it was anything other than usual?
I don't think my weekend could be described as really typical. I always try to do something different, but and there's always a mix in it. This one, 2 of the days, Saturday and Sunday, was dedicated towards what I like doing, working with the youth in emergency response preparedness. I actually spent the 2 days at the retreat center up at Mount St. Ovens. Yep. I guess a lot of people hear about that. It's a really fantastic place.
Haven't been there in a wee bit. Couple of years.
It's really good. It's really.
I'll be honest. The last time I've been there is when I used to go to school.
But that's not a long time, GT. And I just want to see that's what's
you know when you get to the Form 5s and stuff, they will take you there for retreat just before the examinations and stuff. Yeah. And I think that's when I had that opportunity to go there.
Do they still do that though?
I'm not sure. But it's a thing they used to do to kind of get you motivated in a spiritual way and stuff. Have little talks with you and stuff. And I think that was the last time. A long time ago.
Especially if you're Catholic, but if you're not so Catholic, maybe you're not going to be there. That's only But I just want to put context in that weekend with the young people.
Yes.
We had a trainer from Grenada, United States, looking at emergency critical care in emergency. And I was taking a group of young people from the Youth Emergency Action Committee to be more prepared to deal with emergencies in Grenada. And that is reassuring. I think there were about 16 persons. They really assimilated the information well. There was a all-day practical on Sunday. And they're really proving that they can make us proud in the future in terms of where emergency response will go.
You know, we speak all the time on Mondays when we do speak. We speak of emergencies and so forth, but sometimes we don't get the participation of other young people.
Yeah.
You understand? And you speaking of that, how does it feel? I mean, it's not our level of conversation this morning, but it fits in some way or the other. How is it that, how do you feel about young people's interest, especially when it comes to disaster management and so forth? How does it feel? What's the kind of feedback you're getting from young people?
Yeah, it's an interesting question in the sense that I think a lot of it has to do with how we sell our products, or how we make people become interested in what they're supposed to do. And I think because the electronic era has taken over in so many ways, but even that, we have to be able to channel that into generating the interest. So I think the lack of the interest, I can say that we are seeing maybe in disaster management and disaster risk reduction. It has to do a lot with how parents and technocrats encourage people to be part of the process.
Right.
And I think a lot more we can do to make it. Disaster management is not really something that is exciting to an extent, but it is something that can give you a lifelong employment. And if you,
you are reaping the benefits of it.
Tremendously in many different areas. As a matter of fact, I've been having calls from different quarters of Grenada, regionally, globally, technically, in terms of Hurricane Ivan was a great learning experience for all of us.
Yes.
And because I walked through that, and that experience is still walking through in terms of lessons learned and how implementation and building back recovery processes and all of that, Ivan is still used as a case study, and because I was there, a lot of people still contact me for information and so forth. And the whole angle of environmental sciences and the environmental study and protection and so forth. If people are involved in that, there's definitely a place for them in disaster risk reduction. So the associated study areas can give people a really great feel in terms of disaster risk reduction, including information and communication technology, which should be integrated. So the future should be shaped by how we involve the youth, and personally I don't think that they are as involved as they should be. And those of us who are growing older, who may not be able to give the kind of energy that we've been given before, there's absolutely a lot of opportunities for young people to step on board. I'm doing quite a bit to encourage people. My routine since I got to another stage of my life is just trying to involve people, and especially the youth, in becoming what I know the future can offer for them. And as I said, there has never been a dull moment in terms of the opportunities for contribution at community level, me or individuals giving back. And there's also great opportunities for having remunerations coming back to you. Trust me, if anybody asks me, one area of life there's no bias. Disaster risk reduction has a lot of opportunities, and in a way it gives you some level of gratification. It's not about your finances, but you can see your environment adjusting and changing if you make the proper contribution. You can see people's lives modified and changing to the point where they can become more resilient, they can become more happy, they can have greater recovery processes. And when people like other people, when people love nature, when they love the environment, it is not just an employment for you, but it's a pleasure. And for me, it has always been a pleasure doing what I love doing, and I think I have reaped and will continue to reap the benefit, and not just maybe finances or other tangible resources, but seeing people's condition moving from negative to positive is my greatest reward, really.
All right, great. I mean, would you say our environment, our country location, what happens here in terms of disaster and so forth, may be reasons why we're not seeing young people put in that level of interest? Some folks, like nothing happens in Grenada. You understand? Why should I put the energy into getting my mind into a nature of that? Do you think that's something that could probably be responsible for that lack of interest or not too interested?
But to a large extent, yes, part of it. That's part of the cause, because Grenada is a peaceful place, and we hope we can maintain that. In terms of our exposure to hazards, impacts that can become disasters, we are vulnerable. But we do not get that level of impact as some other islands and countries towards our north, etc. But the potential for that to happen really is there. And if we look at the small things that affect us, we may not get a hurricane every year, we may not get a strong earthquake that create huge impacts, but the small things like the landslides, the flooding, and so forth, and sometimes we have slip holes and these things that are created, we have rock falls. When you add them up in small ways, they do come up to a great economic cost. And so if we do not have partners and funders assisting us in our recovery processes, our gross domestic product definitely would not help us, because we don't have that kind of industries, we don't do a lot of productions and so forth, so we have to rely a lot on partners. Take for instance the Molyneux area, that's costing millions of dollars to repair. If you look further on the west coast, there's a lot of retainers, sea defenses and so on that has to go in because the sea is encroaching. And if we take global warming and climate change as one of the effects of it, we know that will happen. The Prime Minister recently in his address spoke of our depleting beaches. There are lots of it happening in Grenada. You look along the northeastern part of the island, and I've seen within the last couple of years about 20-30 meters of encroachment of the sea just in the Greens telescope area, where they were doing the land mining, etc. And as you go around to St. Patrick and these places, even if there's a breakwater and other things, you can also see coconut trees that they just no longer there. Even to the south of the island, you can see sometimes huge sand piles because of different tide action, maybe as an intervention of man's own action that's causing that. So as you look around, there's lots of things that's happening, and yes, we need to not look at the major impact. We need not to feel that we are relaxed, because I can tell you, it doesn't take an annual event for us to be set back. It doesn't take a major disaster for us to be set back. The small ones, if you add them up, you'll realize how much we are spending. And when the larger one comes, it just take one of them and everything will be gone. Because when I saw the impact of Hurricane Ivan in 2004, immediately I said, folks, the Grenada which we had, that was lost. We're seeing a different Grenada today, but we'll see another Grenada in the future. So there are 3 stages of Grenada, actually. And that's what disasters will do to you. They will set you back years and years. And if you ask me then, from my own experience coming from then, I felt a sense of desolation when people asked me, wow, what's going to happen? The few of us that were responding and were there, we felt like we were the few and only people alive, and that's it for Grenada. And when you looked around, Grenada looked as a massive dump heap. You felt a sense of, my God, we're not going to get back there anytime soon.
Do you still feel that we have recuperated enough since after Ivan, in your opinion?
We've done a lot. I mean, Grenada has done a lot. We've come a long way, and I think countries are still using us as a case study. But having done that, we are losing some of the things that we achieved over the last 19 years, basically, because I don't think we are using lessons learned sufficiently to inform our future, and that's critical. I don't think we are using the expertise or local expertise sufficiently to inform our going forward. And I think a lot of brain drain is happening, not just moving from one territory to the other, but brains are going into that mode where it is not useful to economic development anymore, because our system does not lend itself to harnessing that knowledge and that experience that the older people have. And so these people go into a mode, you feel that you contributed over the years, you did something, you worked, you got something, but you attain knowledge, you attain the experience that is useful. But is there an opportunity for you to continue to do that until God takes the strength away from when you're no longer able to do that? And so there are lots and lots of people who are there within our society, and they're not sufficiently harnessed. Their knowledge and the experience is not really accessed, and so that's a great setback. So when people speak about brain drain, we tend to speak about us moving to other territories to contribute, but there is a local brain drain right in our country. We seize up our systems in terms of accessing that knowledge and experience from our locals.
We just don't make use of it anymore.
We just don't make use of it sufficiently. And even we mentioned there are 2 dimensions. Even the youth, we don't sometimes see the youth as very important to something that we do. Even sometimes the older people, they tend to believe, well, they cannot they cannot tolerate the youth because everything is a gadget, everything is a technology. But what we have to do is to be innovative, make them feel part of the process, and make what they do that they enjoy doing contribute to what you want. And I think there has to be that meeting place where the metal and the rubber can come together and contribute towards generating proper outputs.
All right. You know, we said a lot in this segment, Mr. Mike. Listen to this. Talking about disasters. So what happened in Brooklyn the other day?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, Brooklyn is one of the places for us Caribbean people, and certainly, you know,
it was interesting because, you know, sometimes we think of, you know, these big countries. We think, well, disasters of that particular nature may not occur, because we think of the development that may have taken place there.
Yes.
And then sometimes we look at when we do have a little flooding, and so we say, oh well, Grenada is not developed enough to handle that. Yeah. But look at that situation.
Yeah, and you look at the floating cars and all that, and the flooding, and I heard a lot of Grenadians, the basement and the houses, and a lot of extent flooded out. And you ask how prepared were they to deal with that situation. There are some things that are inevitable, it will happen. But it's how you are able to mitigate that. One of the guy who was training yesterday, Jason Lyons, he is part of the New York Red Cross. He's in charge of, I think, 5 boroughs. Yeah. And I worked with him in New York.
Remember I had spoken to him sometime earlier this year or sometime late last year.
Yes, you did, on one of the programs. So he's here in Grenada for a couple of days, and so he had to be on the phone back and forth with the responders. And that's what things do. And there was no real indicator that was going to happen. The rainfall in Torrance, I mean, the prediction in terms of the inches that were going to be precipitated or condensed, it was there. But to the extent and where it was going to actually happen, people could not have really. People left their homes, drove out, and had to abandon their cars and everything to get home. And so that it was a good positive spirit for the guys with the taxis and the Uber and so forth. I know they actually did well. But the reality of those kind of a crisis, when you see that happening in larger countries and how they struggle to make things happen, in the smaller places, we can say if it's happening in those countries, we can make it different for us. We can use something from their experience, what they did in the past or what they're doing currently. We'd want to do it differently. I recall again after Hurricane Ivan in 2004, I had President Carter, former President Jimmy Carter. He came and we spoke about Grenada's recovery process and the question he asked about how Grenada is getting this done. I remember there was I think
he's 99 today, right?
Yeah.
I think today.
I think there was a Barbara Walters. There was a congresswoman who came. She was of Caribbean youths as well. Caribbean roots. And she came. We sat, spoke about the issue, and what they wanted to do was to learn how Grenada is coping as a small island in dealing with that, and Grenada was commended in terms of how we were managing those issues. We had Colin Powell, I think he was UN Secretary of State one time. Yes. He came through with Hurricane Ivan as well. Similar. He looked at what we had the conversation about, and they were taking these back. We had people from the NBA came through asking what message do we want, and they were taking this back as to how small island states could be so resilient and what they themselves can learn. So in a lot of ways, we always tend to believe that the larger countries are the best. Not always. There is absolutely something different that every island and every country you can get and learn from. And so in some cases, it is easier in the smaller islands to be able to maneuver your resources. And because you are so always resources struck, you're always so limited in resources, you learn to, like the old people say, cut and contrive. You make ends meet. So the people who are always exposed to the much and the many, they tend to have greater challenge in dealing with the disasters when they come. So we do have advantage and we do have experience on our side, and we have to use it, and we have to be able to document properly so that our future could be informed and we can build on it from today.
All right. So like we do for a break, let's take our first break. We're coming right back, folks. It's 19 after the hour. Stay with us here on To The Point. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
Introducing the NIS Dream Loan, where possibilities are boundless and your aspirations are our priority. No matter where life takes you, NIS Dream Loans are here to make your dreams a reality. From purchasing your first plot of land or dream property to renovating spaces, building your home, and seamlessly switching mortgages, we cater to every step of your journey. And And here's what sets us apart. We offer easy financing options with competitive interest rates, quick approval processes, and flexible repayment terms. So why wait? Apply now and let our dedicated NIS team guide you through this exciting journey. Visit nisgrenada.org/dream loan or call 440-3309 to book an appointment. Terms and conditions apply. Your dream awaits.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back, Mr. McIntyre. Mr. McIntyre, last week we had an interesting conversation in terms of, we spoke about, food security. Mm-hmm. And we had a very good impact in terms from the viewers and listeners who responded, to what we were speaking of, We probably want to get into it a little bit more this morning. Not in much details as we did last week, but we maybe just brush a little bit on it again, But food security, if you want to make a comparison, especially in the process of the floods and so forth happening, because we are now getting out of the heat trend. Some say maybe by the end of this month we may get out. We probably may get some rain within the month of the latter part of this month into there's some rain planned for today too if we do get it. Yes. With all the heat that we've been experiencing for the last couple of weeks, you understand, just supposedly, we get to a point where floodings and so happens again, and what happens when the soil has been dried for a period of time and get that excessive amount of water. Food security plays an important part in that. We're not wishing for it to happen, but we just sometimes you have to put your mind in that sort of thought pattern, just in case. Roads may be blocked. You understand? Farmers may have lands that's going to be washed away and stuff like that. How still are we to deal with issues like that? How concerned are you with that?
I'm still very concerned though, but what I want to say before I comment further on it is that coming out of our program last week, we did hear, I think JBM brought a news clip on it, and we had a lot of other people chiming in on the issue. I think it was mentioned somewhere at ministerial levels as well in terms of the whole issue of security and food security and food sovereignty to an extent as to how we are dealing with that issue. And the conversation has been going on, and to a lot of people, a lot of things that are happening, they say it's just talk. And to a large extent, they might be right, because when you look over the years in terms of how we can track our process and what we do, we have regressed in a lot of ways for some aspect of food security and a lot of other things we can see. When we seem to be advancing in technology and other things, but some of the fundamentals of what we should be doing to ensure that people have access to safe, reliable, nutritious food, a lot of this, it leaves a lot to be desired. And to a great extent, it may have to do with one of the questions you asked before. Is it because we are not impacted so severely that our planning process is so lax or delayed in terms of what we do? And the conversation that we started last week, we were saying that we need to be a lot more proactive. We need to be able to see the more aggression in terms of driven policy and guiding people as to how that can happen. And one of the things outside of having the impact of some hazard that creates a disaster, but what do you do to mitigate that happening is more critical. And we can look at a few angles of that. We spoke of the instrument that should guide the process. Last week we elaborated on that.
Yes, we did.
And then we spoke about the physical infrastructure, how it is designed so that people can channel resources into that area. So if you have the impact of something, that they are protected. You have, for instance, our fish and other things that you want to be able to preserve. Do we have processing areas that you can have your fish, you can have other food, for instance, the bananas, the avocado, the breadfruit, etc., and these things, do we have refrigerating conditions and conditions that are generated may not be cold but may require some level of heating, the temperature that is required to keep things over an extended period of time. So should we have a crisis on our hand, do we have that facility where, one, we have the natural processing through the solar or otherwise, which is a ready source of energy that can help us save things? And do we have the other mechanical generating aspects where we can have chillers and cool room that would keep things at a longer period of time so that people can have access to it? That is one angle of the spectrum. The other area would be, we spoke about having a knowledge pool for people who are involved in farming and backyard gardening, how they can find the right technique to produce and reproduce these things. In addition to that, one of the contribution that we would like to make today is the challenge of access to the labor force.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of people who want to get things done, but they do not have the labor force to do it. There are people who are willing to pay for getting the things done, but you can't find the people.
Is it a lack of interest, you would say? Because we have a pretty young society in Grenada right now, and I would say, when I say lack of interest, lots of young people, their interest in farming is minimal. If you would say that,
right? They're
looking for the hotel jobs. They could go to a job in a hotel, be a security guard, or be a bus conductor, and the interest of wanting to do that hard labor. And if it could be deemed as hard labor, intensive labor on a farm, right. Lots of folks may not want to get that, and it could be in the farming where they were brought up to. You understand? Yeah. Lots of folks may say, but my mother or my father may say, I worked the land hard already, so I don't want you to be that.
Right.
Which is not the right thing to say, but a lot of folks, I have heard individuals said that. My father said he worked really hard, so you don't want me to work hard too.
Right.
You want me to get that easier job or something on the sort of that nature. So that's why it came. That's why I made the statement when I'm saying, the interest, of wanting that kind of that particular job. That's why individuals may not want to go. It's so that difficult for individuals to get folks to offer their services on that level. So
part of it could be yes, and we mentioned how we make things appeal to the emotions and to the sight, etc. And to a large extent, we diverted from that kind of introduction to our children from early to kind of a love nature, love the soil, etc. And then we made it seem as though using a cutlass and a fork, that is very labor intensive.
Yeah.
But even if we created that negative impression about farming in the past, but there are modern ways that you can make people interested in it. For instance, if you tell a young man and you show him how to drive and use a power tiller, he may find it exciting to sit on a little power tiller
that go taking a fork
without taking a fork.
Exactly.
And if you teach him to use one of these machines where you can go and move the grass and the balayer and the small trees down without him having to just use his physical hand to just drive it, he may find that kind of a cool.
Yeah.
That I have a machine, I have something that...
So you say, modernization should play a big role in terms
modernization should be incorporated in terms of enticing people, and then the information platform to encourage them. A lot of people in rural areas may not have access to particular types of information. So how are we creating those community forums where they can come through and see how to use these machines and see how to use these things and how people use it in other parts of the world, how interesting that could be, how innovative that can be. And so sometimes I think we take the wrong approach to teaching our young people or getting them involved in some things. You use fishing, for instance. If you don't use the right type of bait for crayfish or otherwise, you won't catch them. And if you make a zip at them at one time and I didn't catch them, they don't take the hook again.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to try to find what is the bait that you would want, what to get them interested, because you know what you want. You want crayfish to make a good crayfish broth.
Yeah.
If you want the young people to get involved in the means of using the cutlass that they have not gotten used to or seen, with the corns and the pin inside of your hand, they don't really want that. But if you get them to love equipment and other things that can get the same result, that could be a really positive spiller. So I think we have to be a bit more innovative in terms of enticing people into doing the thing that could be of those real positive products later on. And I also think at a policy level of a state level, while we seem to not have the ready labor force for agriculture, should we not look outside of the box and get a labor pool? I think I did make that recommendation at one of the symposium in agriculture, saying, well, why don't we try the source across Grenada where people can send in their availability and they would wish to work? So there is somebody who's managing that database where people who are willing to work in those areas, they can be accessed. So when farmers want people to work, they can tap into that pool and these people can manage the resource and send them to St. Patrick. You have a group of 12 people. We know we get them mobilized because there are some farmers in St. Patrick need that source. If I end out of that, if we are not able, because of our own mistakes and folly, to attract the local labor force, should we try then to create access for importing that labor force? Should we try to give a particular incentive or license to farmers, or maybe the state mechanism, to access people or labor from outside of our territory who could be brought in to work on our farms to generate the things that we want? When you look at it, we send people to Canada or other places to work on the farms outside of Grenada.
Why not? Why are we not using them here?
Why are we not using them
why
here?
Are they not interested in farming here?
Because maybe that's the point. But the point I also want to make, there would be people outside of our territory who need jobs, who are interested in agriculture, but they would have challenging accessing visas and the finances on their own. So should we look at creating that local access, properly managed, like we create other things, like we have, it could come under agriculture by investment or agriculture by labor, technically, where people are brought in a controlled way, they do a proper vetting, the people who require their expertise will have to prove that they can sustain them over a period of time and so forth. And then there is the mechanism that the state would have to monitor and ensure that these people stay within what they want, and they can go back to the territories after they've come and contributed. I am absolutely sure that if we go down that road to have readily available labor force, we will see a greater output in terms of agriculture, and we will have a more guaranteed food security, sustained production over a longer period of time, and it would give us an opportunity to see how further we can go and how innovative we can be.
Mr. Beck, I would say also a problem I think that is that maybe looming around is information.
Yes.
Because sometimes I hear youngsters say, "Well, I never knew this was people wanted me for that purpose."
That's right.
You understand?
That's right.
I never know they wanted me to for and they may be interested in doing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see guys, the only thing they hear about maybe is to do little road work.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
That they hear about that.
Right.
But they may never know there are farmers who want that information. So maybe the authorities should get themselves together in a way of getting this information, this person the right way.
Yes.
And it probably could make a dent. You never know.
And there's one thing before we accept callers, I show maybe down the road. There's one thing I really, really want to drive here in terms of I know the government Ministry of Agriculture had a farmers assistance program where they provided financing for farmers to create plants and clear lands and so forth. That's a noble initiative. But our culture has to change. Our attitude towards government and state resource must change. You know what I understand? People would not go out and give the kind of labor and time that is required in the industry. Why? Because they would say government paying for that.
Yeah, so they,
and that's such
if I have to work 5 hours, I only do an hour because I must get paid.
And that must change. That must change. Government resources, not free resources. It comes from somewhere, and it is taken from somewhere to plug into somewhere to make something positive happen. And why should people think that because government is providing that it should be abused, it should be used inappropriately? That kind of a nature, that kind of a culture cannot be allowed to continue. So I think the whole education process and the control mechanism mechanism that has to really kick in terms of how people are cultured towards using state mechanism and resources that become available to assist the people who really need it. And the abuse and all these kind of mechanism, one of our failures here is monitoring, evaluating, and enforcing principles that's supposed to be there. Before things could be implemented, I think the enforcement mechanism, the monitoring, so for quality control, etc., that must be in place. And sometimes we do try to implement projects and processes, and the instrument of control, enforcing, and evaluating, that really is.
I always have a simple way of saying it. We allow things to deteriorate too much in Grenada before we try to fix it. And it's like when things deteriorate and it spoils. Sometimes when things are spoiled, it's spoiled. Saying it in layman terms, once it's spoiled, is difficult to heal it again. You understand? So most times it's getting the new individual now watching these things been spoiled for so long. Now they don't want to do it in a proper way anymore because they've been seeing it done in that particular way for the longest while. And I think that's where the authorities need to step up their game some more.
Absolutely.
And don't allow things to deteriorate to the level that it is. You understand?
But you know what I want to plug into that area. I would wish to hear more of people who have been arrested, charged, penalized, punished for the abuse, inappropriate use of state funds or otherwise, or things that are designed for particular thing. There has to be somewhere where people should become accountable, responsible, and punished or penalized for not doing the right thing. And when that happens, we must make it public.
But there's always that hush-hush nature when it comes to these
things. Make it public. That's exactly what you're saying.
That hush-hush nature of it,
people
folks,
know that this is
we may never know about it until once again it gets to that deteriorated stage where it has to be made public, and we never knew what it was happening at the initial stages. You understand?
And everybody have to eat a food, and that person need a blight.
I agree.
That has to stop, and we must ensure that we are serious about the process, or else we will continue like programs like these, continue to talk, and there will be no action.
And then we wonder why our food security level is not the way it is. You understand? Because our individuals are not doing what they're supposed to do,
and they're not held accountable for what they have not done.
All right, we due for a break. Let's take it. See, lots of folks are trying to get in on the program. We will initiate some calls when we do come back after the break, and we'll continue with our conversation. Stay with us here, folks, on To The Point.
National Lotteries Authority is a proud sponsor of many cultural activities within the Tri-Island state of Grenada.
My name is Anderson Matheson, also known as Leftis, and I'm a calypsonian and string band music player from Carrico. I support the games of the National Lottery Authority because culture benefits tremendously. Annually, the NLA supports the Carrico and Petit Matin Carnival, the Carrico String Band Music Festival, and all regattas, among other activities. When I play the game of the NLA, I can see where my money goes, and it's an investment into our culture.
Yes, Grenada, when you play the games of the NLA, you enable us to invest in the skills and talents of our people in the areas of sports, culture, and nation building.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, to The Point here on Classic Radio and GBN TV. Myself and Mr. Sylvan McIntyre this morning. The usual conversation we do have on a Monday, and we talk everything in between, including, this morning our program, we stress a bit of, it's a continuation a wee bit on last week's program in terms of food security and ways we can mitigate just in case emergencies popping on us again, and how we can mitigate in between that. Let's take our call and see what this caller has to offer. Caller, good morning. You're welcome.
Morning, GT, and morning, Mr. McIntyre. I like the tone of the conversation this morning and the sort of content. Because I was going to raise some issues when I get the opportunity. One of it is that it is said that there's a time for everything. There's a time to weep and a time to rejoice. Similarly, there's a time for sun and there's a time for rain. We've been getting a lot of rain and sun lately. And we're thinking that the time will come that we may get equally amount of rain And what are we doing to ensure that we are prepared for when the rain eventually comes? And so I'm glad that, you are raising some of those issues. But also the need for education. And when I say education, I don't mean putting people together and giving them some raw information. I mean, we need to philosophize, first of all, what kind of future, what kind of society we need. And that must include the ability to feed ourselves. In that context, if you're talking about food security, Dr. Guido Marshall must be somebody you bring on this program. Dr. Marshall has some revolutionary ideas of how we can deal with food security from a climate point of view, from a disaster point of view. I have suggested it in the past, and other people seek them out, but it seems as though a prophet has no honor in this country. And then finally, in terms of experience, Mr. McIntyre said we have experience on our side. Yes, but when they had after Hurricane Ivan, I suggested that we find a way to have job training on the job. Some of the people who have learned some of the skills from the people who came in here, let us have a sort of repository that we can know who learns and they can pass on the knowledge. But we are not progressive in that sense. And the thing about in terms of learning or experience, the greatest country in the Caribbean, which we should make every effort to learn from, Cuba, notwithstanding the embargo on them, they have been able to preserve life and to stay in some form of decent living until now. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much for your contribution. And he made a point there that learning from our experience.
Yeah.
That is crucial.
And you would hear that repeated a lot of times because we have experience and we know they're not well harnessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's entertain our caller this morning. Caller, you're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. McIntyre. Before I say exactly what I want to say, I said you're in the wrong place. You need to be able to re-educate people. You are in the wrong place and you're still in the wrong place. You have to give advice to the whole church. So you're supposed to be an advisor, pay special for that. Although I might want some money out of you too when you're paying you. Now, I look at all what you are saying. In the past, is true. We need not education. We need to be educated. And I said re-educated. Because people have a tendency to believe that once they could read and write, they are educated. But if you consider yourself to educate, you should know when to fight, when to plant, when to run away from fight, and when to fight. And this is what we in Grenada don't have. We don't have everybody balling and no. Nobody or few people want to learn. Who wants to learn more is people like you who have already learned. I don't even include myself. Because sometimes when I say things, people criticize it. And for several, I don't want to even say that. Mr. Rolo, you usually say good things, irrespective of what they think. To me, when I assess myself, I would look to the deeds of inspect myself. And I know when I wrong and when I right. And for some reason, I should think when you were in the force, maybe, even now, people will say what you're saying are stupid because they do not analyze what you are saying. So I think we must utilize you. If you want me with you, I want plenty money. Anyhow, enjoy yourself.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning.
Yeah.
Seem like you have a little challenge on your hand there.
Yeah, so I think you're thinking that I get paid for the one I'm doing too. I just wish to put a disclaimer that this is a contribution to the nation.
All right, let's take another caller before we get into our conversation some more. Caller, good morning. You're welcome.
Morning, GT, and morning to Mr. McIntyre.
Good morning.
GT, I just want to clear up on something that I spoke about last week on the program. Because when we call, we are doing awareness, not that we're just trying to criticize. We are doing awareness, we make our concern, and we want some remedy, or we want these kind of things. I know if you could recall, someone had called and talked about some white lady in Grenada.
Yes, I remember that was on Friday's program.
Right, and I jump in and try to defend that person because my part of it was the times have changed and people don't do that. When we give certain information, some other people might take it wrong and do. So I was looking after that person's security. There's like a sister. So I want the person that
But I don't want us to spend too much time on that because it's not really the nature of our conversation this morning. Friday was an open line, so it was spoken about. But it's not the nature of our conversation today. All right?
Yeah. But I wanted to just to clarify on that because I want to apologize to the person that did the awareness. But it's not the lady, my sister, what I know. It's not that person. But there is something going on there which the authority should be attended to. But then again in Grenada, it's same on the program what we're talking about. Authorities know they give permission for certain things and they're leaving it to the population to start the correcting. For instance, in my area, the bay is called, in the early days they call it the basin. The government said, look, boats shouldn't be like this, tied on play, they have special place in it. The reason why they call it a basin because it's not a runoff. But that bay now, there's over 14 yachts inside that bay right now, and it's a little bay. It is a bay they call BBC. Our name is Monish. 14 yachts inside there, and that's not a runoff. What is going on? But the authorities said you shouldn't think. But the Coast Guard is coming around there, and all the authorities know they want the population to kick up and say things, but they're giving authority to certain things. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. A little bit off topic, but we do understand he just wanted to get out to get out of his chest a little bit.
You taking the last one?
Just take another caller before we continue our conversation. Good morning to you, caller. Welcome.
Good morning. It's all well and good, this what Mr. McIntyre talked about, forming a pool so we can get workers and so on. But one thing I want to ask, what is the incentive to get young people to get into agriculture? What is the incentive? If we don't have an incentive, they won't come along. They won't get involved. That's trouble. Okay?
Caller, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, caller. Thank you.
Gigi, I think you mentioned that in a different way in terms of what could interest what make them interested in agriculture, and he's saying a different word in terms of incentive. That's $1 million question that is beyond my. Well, I don't even have a pay grade right now. But it is the state mechanism to answer what.
But it goes across the board, Anywhere you're working, or if you want for someone to give you a heavy interest in what you're working for, incentives have to be applied.
Incentive, but I think we have to make the output of what people can contribute be the incentive. Right. In other words, you should be able to entice people to say that if you are able to produce one, you have a ready market for it, or this is what you can get out of it, and show them. You have to show them a pathway. That if you start here, this is where you can reach. And it goes back to
but sometimes it comes like that, but then sometimes still the incentives from where is still not offered from the workplace at times.
Well, yeah.
Let's take our final call. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Yes, good morning. Mr. McIntyre, good morning. I'm very happy to hear you and the message you're sending out there. I'm just wondering, is your voice just a voice in the wilderness? Or is anybody really listening to you? Or I should say anybody who needs to listen to you, are they really listening to you? And if they are, I hope that we see a great change. I hope we see a great change because, like I say, your voice is a powerful voice, but, based on what happened in history, I'm just afraid that it's just a voice in the wilderness. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much.
So that caller did not really dampen my spirit technically, but he just raised really a strong reality that, what we do, we hope it's not falling on deaf ears. But the point is, everything might not be adopted, but as we continue to say that if we keep nagging at it, we keep knocking at it, we keep the eyes on the issue, we keep mentioning the issues and don't just sit on it. I think one of the things of the past is that we raise things and they die off. People don't continue to repeat them. They will either get fed up with you or they do something about it.
So I agree. It's like when we talk about the science, because we did a couple of programs about it. Yeah.
And I had something to say about science today, so I'm happy that you mentioned that. So in the last
let's get into this segment. Let's
just take this next
caller. Take this final caller. Let's take the final caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning to both of you all.
Good morning.
Yeah, I have 2 quick points. Number 1.
Caller, you may have to lower your radio before you continue, please. Lower your radio or your television in the background, or totally turn them off.
Am I good now?
Go right ahead, please.
Yes. I heard you all speak about the farmers with the helping with the work. I love that part. If I could put something in place, like when, if you don't get the real thing going, that you have something in place that when farmers want assistance in working, that they have a number they could call, that the agriculture people could send out a group to help the people work, because there is a lot of people that need people to work, and they cannot get people to work. That's why you see have a lot of land abandoned. Some of them cannot do the work, but they want people. They will pay people, but they cannot get people to help them do the work. So if you have a number that they could call and say, well, okay, that group is organized, that anybody wants a help in the farm, that they could call that number and then they would send out a group of people back to that people to help them work. That would be very, very good. And the other one is that yesterday I passed by a young lady who just trying to help herself in a farm, a little farm. She planted some pepper, some okra, and some cabbage and lettuce. When she go to reap her crop, they pick all the pepper, they pick all the okra, and they jump up on the cabbage because it's already yet. That is not encouragement. That is very, very bad. I feel sad because I went and see it. Thank you very much.
All right, caller, thank you so much. That's the kind of story you don't want to hear.
The pretty larceny issue is here with us, and as people mentioned, incentives.
Yeah.
I also think access to the technology in terms of cameras and devices to help people monitor what's happening on their farm. I think that's something. I think there was a conversation about that as to how the state mechanism could give maybe tax break or otherwise for the importation of those equipment and instruments that can help in monitoring that aspect of pretty larceny and so forth.
In conversation with the police from time to time, they do speak about, ways folks can monitor their farms and stuff to just to evade pretty larceny, and those are what you mentioned, cameras and stuff like that can help as a way of getting. Mr. McIntyre, we just have a few more minutes on the program.
Yes.
And we should have had a different topic line this morning, but sometimes how things roll.
Right, and sometimes we really cannot ignore some people who wants to make their contribution.
Yes. Mitigating emergencies at our local institutions of learning.
Yes.
Tell us how that could be followed.
I am happy that we are going in this angle. There has been some interest recently, and that could have come out of our conversations in terms of the awareness in emergency response and mitigation. Over the last couple of years, and which seems can be a growing issue, we've had situations where there are a lot of emergencies at school, some created or some otherwise by natural means. There are people who are coming down with in some cases, chronic illnesses, undiagnosed illnesses, and some where there are no real treatment for them, but some interventions can help or mitigate the impacts of it. And what we recognize is that there's an absence across country where the structure does not lend itself to that kind of emergency response. In some cases, some schools or institutions of learning do not have sick bays. They do not have sufficient staff, if any at all, on board who are trained to deal with some of the emergencies. My recommendation would be that there has to be a revisit of the system and structure at our institutions of learning as to what mechanisms could be established to have a response on site. What we recognize and we know as a fact that timely intervention that is appropriate do limit the extent to which some emergencies can go, and so in most cases it has prevented sickness and illnesses from becoming worse. It has promoted recovery to a large extent, and it has also prevented people from losing their lives because there was some structure of response. I can say from that We've had some initiatives started.
Okay.
TAMCC is one of the places that reached out to me personally to speak about their interest in terms of what they want to do, and that's noble. And there are at least 2 other places that have asked for some help in that regard. I am saying that should be driven across country through our institutions of learning, where it becomes
at all levels.
Yeah, at all levels, where it becomes a mandate, a requirement that every school, and subject to what Ministry of Education would say or they have in place, it is something that should be driven from that area, where it is like there's a standard for every classroom. There's a requirement for every school to operate, including tuck shops and all of that. There should be a condition that is written within the school's policy that emergency response, there has to be certain place that is catered for that, and there should be always a particular number of persons trained in particular things who will deal with the events when they happen. The hospital health response resources will be overwhelmed at times. They may not always be readily accessible, but there should be persons within those institutions who have at least some basic knowledge that they can respond to the situation and have it controlled, maintained for a period of time until other expert help arrive.
Most schools will just tell you, will call you and tell you your son or daughter to come and pick them up.
That's it.
You understand?
Yes.
And sometimes you send your sons or daughters to school. They may go to school feeling well that morning.
Yeah.
And then some illness occurs, and then sometimes you have no control over it. And if the school can mitigate in between there, have some sick bay or somewhere, maybe a teacher or maybe someone who has knowledge of taking care of someone's health. In the school institution, I think that could certainly help for parents, because sometimes not all parents can leave their work at a particular time to just run out to the school just in case of emergency, except it's an excessive emergency, understand? But emergency of a small scale, school should be able to deal with that until the parent arrives or all of a sudden.
And in addition to that what will help or complement that, my recommendation would be also that there is a register of the entrance, the freshmen, people who just entered schools, as to whether or not their medical history, what kind of illnesses they have. Maybe that's a condition.
But I think that's usually part of the registration process also.
That is. But then, if that is commendable, it has to go beyond that then. What items do we need to keep on board at certain levels, and what people and places that we have? I am assured in some places, I am aware that there are some institutions that do have some levels of that. The point that I'm making here, it must be driven across country, it must be standardized, and it must be something maintained, it must be inspected, it must be evaluated, and ensure that according to what the Ministry of Health will drive, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, that when we have certain things occurring in school, there must be a school's response to it.
Do you think that's part of the policy of schools? That
I'm not aware, and I might be.
Or should it be part of the policy?
It should be. It definitely should be. And my limited knowledge in some areas, in some places, maybe it has been. It's a requirement, but it is not maintained. It's not inspected annually or otherwise to ensure that standard is maintained. I would want to take the conversation slightly further. There are some students that might be, and it goes beyond even students. Some people that might be diagnosed with some conditions that there is no known cure for at the moment. There would be there is available some medication that could appease the condition for a while, but people who need to respond or treat these people, they're not aware. Are not aware as to what treatment they should give. There is something called DNR, do not resuscitate, and there's something that's called the dog tags or the medical alert. I am suggesting that parents and institutions that are aware that there are students who may have certain chronic or other type of diagnosed conditions, that they carry some information area with them.
Yes.
It can happen on a smartwatch. Smartwatches today are designed to give you your body temperature, they give you your heart rates, etc. But there should be, like the tags and other things, that people who are diagnosed, that there is some information process that if these persons happen to be in a case of need, that a contact number is readily available. Not just the institutions would have it technically as a parent's contact, but as these people, the students traverse, or even adults to an extent, at other institutions, they may move from place to place. They might be on their own. They may have a collapse situation. They may not have no means of people knowing who they are or the contact. So my recommendation would be for us to step the game up, and that people with those conditions diagnosed, they should carry some tag that may say, in the event of emergency, this number that you can call, so that the response for such situation would be much quicker, and the condition doesn't have to become as bad, and the recovery process would become. So my recommendation, my suggestion, I wanted to speak about that this morning slightly in our program, that institutions of learning and places of mass gathering and transit, etc., there are certain medical conditions, items that should become mandatory.
All right. Something you agree with that. Mr. McIntyre, we just have about 30 seconds left on today's show.
Before we leave the program, I just want to say a really heartfelt thanks to all the persons who have been commending us on this program. Right. They meet us from time to time and say, really good program, learning a lot, contribution. We would want to expand this so people can give us recommendations as to some things that they think we can...
topical ideas.
Topical ideas that they can come forth with. And finally, as I leave, I just want to say happy birthday to my daughter, Tamsisi Suraj Maxween. She's celebrating her 70th birthday today. I just want to wish her all the best.
All right, great. Mr. McIntyre, as usual, thank you for being on today's program. Of course, hopefully next week we're able to do another program.
Absolutely.
Another interesting topic line. As you mentioned, our listeners and viewers, they probably have something that they think we can mitigate on, and you could probably expand on it once we kick it off.
Sure.
Once again, folks, to our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for being part of our program today. Join us again for another edition of To The Point. Have yourself a good day, folks. This is where I say goodbye for this edition. Goodbye.